Hi guys, it's me, Chazza HD, and welcome back to the 2025 Formula One season. The summer break is over after a month. Well, technically, yeah, it is a month. It's been 4 weeks since the last Grand Prix, even though the last Grand Prix was still in the month of August. If that makes sense. But yeah, we are back from the summer break. Hopefully, you guys had a good summer break. Hopefully, you enjoyed yourself. If you had a summer holiday or whatever, hopefully it was all good. And yeah, we are back for the remainder of the 2025 season. 10 races to go, and still quite a bit to be decided in the championships, not just in the midfield areas, but mainly, of course, we are focusing on the drivers' championship. And the Drivers' Championship going to be contended between the two McLaren drivers of Oscar Piastri and Lando Norris. Only 9 points separate those two. And in these final 10 races, we will see who ultimately takes not only the championship, but wins what will be, for either driver, their first ever Drivers' Championship. Will it be their only Drivers' Championship of their career? Or will it be the first of many? We will find out, of course, for the rest of this year and the next few years. But yeah, we are back, firstly, at Zandvoort for the usual Grand Prix that we have on the return from the summer break. A Grand Prix that has provided some excitement over the last few years, mainly when the weather plays a bit of a role, which hopefully it will do this weekend. But looking at the weather radar, it doesn't look like, unfortunately, we are going to get the rain which was promised a few days ago. When you looked at, say, the radar a few days ago, it looked like we were having most likely a wet weekend at Zandvoort, but the weather forecast has improved. It's cleared, and even though it's quite windy at Zandvoort, it is most likely going to be dry for the rest of the weekend. Probably going to be wet overnight and into tomorrow morning. But for the actual race and for this qualifying session today, it's going to be dry, which is unfortunate because a dry, race, let's say, around this track is just not exciting whatsoever because it is just so hard to overtake around this circuit. It's a very narrow track, even with smaller cars. And with these cars that are so massive, it's practically impossible to overtake unless you have a massive pace advantage over your rival. So yeah, that is why for this weekend I am only doing a qualifying watch along, because as it's going to be a dry weekend, qualifying is the most important part of this Grand Prix weekend. It will pretty much decide the race winner and probably the podium as well. So yeah, only a qualifying watch along from myself this weekend. But qualifying today should be pretty exciting. It always is close here at Zandvoort because, of course, of how short of a lap it is. And we have had some big surprises in qualifying here at Zandvoort over the years. Williams getting in the top 5. We've had, Aston Martin in there. Alpine, AlphaTauri, I remember a few years ago. So, it also gives a chance for some midfield teams to really get into the action. And looking at the running so far, there is one midfield team that is looking like a front-running team this weekend and is the dark horse, without doubt, for qualifying. But, yeah, we'll get into, obviously, what's happened so far this weekend, the data, who's looking quick and who isn't, in a moment. Before we get into that, though, just want to say, yeah, hello to you guys. Hope you're doing well. And no matter what circumstances you're going through, and no matter how your summer break has been, whether it's been good, bad, I hope at the moment you are doing as well as possible. And hopefully you will join me today in watching along and at least enjoying qualifying for the Dutch Grand Prix at Zandvoort. And yeah, we'll get through or get into the build-up in a moment. I just want to quickly, though, let you guys know, as usual, there is a poll running in the chat asking you guys, who do you think will take pole position for the Dutch Grand Prix? And your options in the poll are Lando Norris, Oscar Piastri, Max Verstappen, of course, the home driver, and Fernando Alonso, which is a, let's say, surprise admission. But when I get into this data in a moment, you'll see why I have put him in that poll. But yeah, let me know, out of those 4 driver options, who do you think takes pole position today at Zandvoort? Obviously, that poll will keep running until the start of Q3, which will be in just over a couple hours from now. But yeah, hope you guys are well, and let's just get straight into it and start with the results of the most representative session we've had so far this weekend. I will say, just to let you guys know, that even though Lando Norris, topped practice 2 with a 1 minute 9.8, that lap time has been improved upon quite a bit in practice 3. Lando Norris also topping practice 3 and went nearly a second quicker than that, and he did a 1 minute, I think 1 minute 8.9, I think it was. So yeah, the lap time's improving quite a bit, at least for McLaren compared to practice 2. But in practice 3, not necessarily all the teams were massively improving on the lap times they did in this second practice session. But yeah, McLaren, no surprise, the quickest team. They are going to be the quickest team today and this weekend. This track is perfectly suited for their car. It is a brilliant track for the McLaren to really show why they have the best car in Formula 1. Splitting the McLarens, though, in practice 2, only just Fernando Alonso for Aston Martin. And yet again, like what we saw right before the summer break in Hungary, Aston Martin are super, super quick, and even quicker by the looks of it here than they were probably in Hungary. And obviously, we saw what happened in Hungary. They obviously finished 5th in the race, and they were, I think, less than 0.2 of a second away from pole position. So imagine what could be possible today. No doubt, Aston Martin, I think, are a front-running team. When I say front-running, I don't mean they're on the pace of McLaren. McLaren, I think, still, comfortably have a few tenths of a second in their pocket over a team like Aston Martin. But when it comes to Mercedes, Red Bull, and Ferrari, the other typical front-running teams, I think Aston Martin are right in the mix of those teams, and arguably, you could say they're quicker than all of those teams. It's going to be close in this qualifying session, no doubt about it. So, yeah, Aston Martin are right in there, which is great to see. And they are going to make, if qualifying today is going to be exciting, it's probably going to be down to them because they are a surprise package. I mean, we thought they would be competitive here. They've been very competitive as of late, and this track definitely does suit their car and what the characteristics of their car. But I did not expect them to be this quick. And clearly, Aston Martin improving a lot compared to where they were at the start of the season, where they were barely able to get into the top 10 at best. And now they're mixing it with the big boys again, which is really what they should be doing, given the potential, let's say, that team has, and especially with Fernando Alonso at the wheel. See, Aston Martin looking very quick. Keep an eye out for them in qualifying. Mercedes then next up. George Russell was quite disappointed after practice in terms of he felt that Mercedes were maybe too far away from McLaren in terms of pace. Honestly, I think Mercedes were, I wouldn't say impressive in practice, but I don't think Mercedes could really be any closer to McLaren, given that McLaren clearly have the best car. So, yeah, Russell's disappointed, but Mercedes just aren't on the same level as McLaren. That is clear to see. Russell, though, looks like he's in good form. The Mercedes car looks like it is most likely quicker than the Red Bull, definitely quicker than the Ferrari car. And if Aston Martin do live up to the hype in qualifying, that's probably going to be their main rival in qualifying when it comes to possibly securing a top 3 result for qualifying today. So, yeah, George Russell looking strong. Mercedes looking strongish, I would say. And yeah, keep an eye on them. They're looking, I would say, quite a bit better than I expected. Obviously, they had a bit of a stronger Grand Prix in Hungary a few weeks ago than I think we were expecting. But coming here, I did not expect Mercedes to be as competitive already as they have been so far. I thought Red Bull and Ferrari would be definitely ahead of them, but looks to be the opposite at the moment. Max Verstappen in 5th. Absolutely no way is Max getting pole position today. Not just because of the, how far he is behind the McLarens, but even if the 2 McLaren drivers were to have an absolutely abysmal qualifying and crash in qualifying, I'm still not sure he has enough pace to even be quicker than Russell or even Alonso in the Aston Martin. So, yeah, Max, I think he'll do well to end up on the second row of the grid, to be honest. He just doesn't have a car under him that can really comfortably be top 3 on the grid or anywhere near the McLarens. The McLarens are in a different universe compared to the Red Bull. That's clear to see. So yeah, Max, P4, P5, that's going to be the area he's going to be operating in, unfortunately. And then a bit of a gap to Lewis Hamilton in 6th. Now, Ferrari yesterday and so far in general have been absolutely diabolical. And it's not really a massive surprise because we know their car has issues through certain types of corners, and this track is not going to be one of the better, say, circuits for them. Definitely, they're going to be a lot more competitive next week at Monza, for example. But I am surprised at just how far off they are compared to McLaren. Again, I expected Ferrari this weekend to be, significantly slower than McLaren, but they are even further off by the looks of it than I thought. And Hamilton 6th, Leclerc in 8th. That is just absolutely awful. In practice 1, they were, I think, 14th and 15th. So they've really had an awful weekend so far. Maybe by some miracle they will improve on this and will somehow drag out a top 4 finish. But I think Ferrari, going into qualifying, by the looks of it, probably have the 5th best car, which is awful as far as I'm concerned. Especially when you consider, the last Grand Prix we were at a few weeks ago in Hungary, which is a similar-ish track to this one at Zandvoort in terms of, lots of corners coming all the time. A very tight, windy circuit. Downforce, obviously, the key around a circuit like this. In Hungary, Ferrari led for most of the race and were on pole, even though they weren't the fastest team. They were at least the second best team in Hungary. So it's not like at every type of aero-heavy track Ferrari this season have been bad. When again, the last aero-heavy track we were at, Ferrari nearly won the race. So I just don't understand why they're, again, this far behind McLaren. I just don't. I don't get it. We'll see in qualifying what happens, but yeah, I don't really have any high hopes for them. They don't look as bad as they were at this Grand Prix last year, which is probably the only positive thing I can say. I think last year they, in qualifying, they ended up 6th and 10th, which is probably around about where they might end up today. But yeah, they look probably a slight bit better than that, I would say. And yeah, Ferrari, if you're a Ferrari fan, this is a weekend to, I wouldn't say skip, but just don't expect anything. Next week's race in Monza, that's going to be your chance to get a win. This Grand Prix is absolutely not. And then you got Tsunoda 7th. Good to see Tsunoda looking strong so far. And then Franco Colapinto 9th, Hulkenberg in 10th. Alpine clearly do have a lot of pace. Colapinto, good to see him in the top 10, showing a rare bit of, pace. But what this does show, because we know that on a regular basis, Pierre Gasly is quicker than Franco Colapinto by, at least probably a couple tenths of a second. Again, what it shows is that if Gasly can maximize himself in qualifying, maximize his performance, there is a good car there, around this track this weekend, which is really encouraging to see. So keep your eye on Alpine and, most importantly, Pierre Gasly. Not only because of how good the car is looking, but also Gasly is one of the strongest drivers around this circuit. In the first year back here, he qualified and finished in 4th place. 2023, finished on the podium after starting outside of the top 10. He has always been strong here as Gasly. And I don't see why he wouldn't, if the Alpine car, they can make the top 10, then I think Gasly probably makes the top 10 himself. And then, Hulkenberg 10th. Sauber looking competitive, but I'm not sure they are top 10 competitive. It's going to be close, but I'm not sure they've got quite enough to be in the top 10. And then for the rest of the order, Oliver Behrman in 11th. Haas looking okay. And then Antonelli in 12th. Antonelli's had a difficult weekend. He looked a bit better in practice 3, but yeah, Antonelli has not had a good weekend so far. And from what I've seen so far, looks like he is only continuing the poor form he has shown in these last few races since basically his podium in Montreal, which was nearly 3 months ago. So, yeah, Antonelli, if he does make the top 10, I don't think he's going to be very high up in the top 10, put it that way. Bortoleto 13th, not bad. I think Bortoleto, though, he knows he could do better. He's got a superior head-to-head compared to Hulkenberg, his teammate, in qualifying. So if Hulkenberg could do what he did in practice, then we know that Bortoleto can, get right in there. So keep your eyes on Bortoleto. And Bortoleto is in pretty good form in a Sauber car that is getting better all the time. Liam Lawson 14th. Difficult to say where Racing Bulls are because Isaac Hadjar did not do a lap time in practice 2. I think Racing Bulls are in the mix to maybe make Q3, but I don't think they will. I think they probably will end up in, a 12th or a 13th place at best. Esteban Ocon 15th, not bad. And then 16th and 17th for the two Williamses. Williams, though, in practice 2, did not do a run on the soft tyre. So if they had, maybe they would have just snuck into the top 10 or been just outside of it, maybe just ahead of Oliver Behrman there in 11th place. So keep your eye on Williams. They're looking decent, I'd say at best. Maybe we'll make the top 10 if one of their drivers really pulls out a great lap. We know Alex Albon can. He did so here a couple years ago in 2023. Remember, he was 5th on the grid in the Williams. What an unbelievable weekend he had that weekend a couple years ago. And then Lance Stroll 18th. Obviously, he could do a lot better than that, given where Aston Martin have looked. Gasly 19th. He could do a lot better than that. And then, yeah, Hadjar did not do a lap time. So, looking, I think, outside of the fight for pole position, which, I mean, it is still going to be competitive to an extent between Norris and Piastri. McLaren are clearly, a step ahead of the rest. Outside of that, though, if you look at the rest of the field, it looks pretty close and competitive. So, yeah, I think we are in for a good, exciting session. But let's get into the sector time data just to understand why certain teams are quick and certain teams are slow this weekend. Let me just clear my throat before we get into this. And first sector, which is not really that important. The only important thing about the first sector is that you don't make a mistake, basically. Obviously, you have, turn 1, which is kind of like a fast hairpin, and then you go into another hairpin, which again is a bit of a fast hairpin, unusual hairpin. And yeah, as long as you don't make a mistake in the first sector, that's really what is key. Williams, surprisingly, the quickest team in sector 1. Might be because they've gone with a bit of a lower downforce setting. That might be the cause behind that, because of course the one of the only DRS zones is in the first sector, and it's the part of the lap where you're on throttle the most. So maybe that's the cause for that. And then you got Aston Martin, just ahead of McLaren, pretty much on the same pace. And then a slight drop off to Ferrari, a tenth of a second off. Ferrari, though, doing absolutely fine in the first sector. It's the rest of the lap where it falls apart. And then you got Red Bull, Mercedes, Haas, Alpine, Racing Bulls, and then Sauber, I have to say, quite surprising how far off they are in the first sector. If they can improve on that first sector pace by a couple tenths, Sauber probably would then be top 10 material. So, yeah, we'll see if they can. Maybe just going with a bit too much wing, maybe costing them in that first sector, where, again, you're on throttle most of the time. The middle sector, though, is definitely the most important part of the lap. Even though it's not by far the longest part or the longest sector of the lap, it's really where it showcases the quality of your car. And in the middle sector, the McLaren and the Aston Martin pretty much on equal terms through there. Mercedes, pretty good pace, given that we know they're not as good as McLaren through the corners, only half a tenth off. Can't really ask much more if you're Mercedes. And then Alpine, 4th best. And that's why I say keep an eye on them, especially with Pierre Gasly, if he can operate at his best, because I think they could really be a surprise package in this qualifying session. Then you got Red Bull, 10th and a half off, which them being a 10th and a half off McLaren in this part of the lap isn't, I would say, a bad thing, because it's, I think, to be expected. To be 10th and a half off Aston Martin, though, is obviously not good. So, yeah, that's obviously a further showcase with Red Bull of the downfall of that team. They got Sauber looking a bit better in the middle sector, and then a couple tenths of a second drop off to the Ferrari team. 4.5 tenths of a second they are losing, not only to McLaren but to Aston Martin in just the middle sector. And the middle sector is only just under 25 seconds long. That is a lot of lap time to lose in not even half a minute of time. And that's really where the lap time is being lost. If Ferrari were doing the type of pace that Mercedes or even Red Bull were doing in this part of the lap, Ferrari would be podium contenders. But with that type of pace, I wouldn't say they've got no chance, but it's going to be very, very hard to get close to even the second row of the grid when you are this far off the pace in just this middle sector. It's appalling as far as I'm concerned. Then you got Haas, disappointing pace for me from Haas in the middle sector. Should be doing better given how well Sauber are doing. Racing Bulls then also disappointing from them given how well we know they can be through the corners. And then Williams, the slowest team, but again, remember Williams did not do a soft tyre run, so they could have probably gone 2 to 3 tenths quicker in this part of the lap. So they would have maybe been just ahead of Ferrari in the middle sector if they'd done a soft tyre run. So not bad, but not great either in terms of, I think, the potential pace that Williams have got. And then the final sector, you've got that slow-ish, unique chicane in front of the Verstappen grandstand, and then a 90-degree right-hander, and then onto the banking, flat out with DRS until the start-finish line. McLaren, the quickest through the final sector by a tenth of a second. Ferrari doing a lot better in the final sector, and if it wasn't for that middle sector, Ferrari's pace is actually, in the first and the final sector, it's not good, but it's, again, it would be good enough to be probably podium contenders, strong podium contenders, but that middle sector is just destroying them this weekend. Mercedes then in fourth, then Red Bull fifth, and then you got Sauber, Alpine, Haas, Racing Bulls, and then Williams again slowest. But again, because they didn't do a soft tyre run, that's why they're slowest. If they did a soft tyre run, they probably would be on the pace of Alpine, maybe slightly ahead. Yeah, Williams, I think overall are probably 6th or 7th best team. Something like that. I wouldn't go any higher than that. I think that's probably where they're at. And good to see that so far this weekend, Carlos Sainz looks like he's on the pace of his teammate, because obviously Carlos has had a absolutely terrible season so far. But if I just go back to these results, in terms of the pecking order, McLaren obviously are the quickest team. There is no doubt about that. Even though in practice 3 they looked like they were miles clear of everyone else, I don't think that's going to be the case. I think it will close up a lot, the gap between them and the rest in qualifying. They'll still be up the front row. Again, they still do have the best car, but I think the rest of the teams will improve a lot and close that gap. Second quickest, I would probably say Aston Martin. Second quickest, just about ahead of Mercedes third. The issue is, though, for Aston Martin, as great as Fernando Alonso is, especially in a race situation, in qualifying, Alonso, we know, is not what he used to be and has never been the most elite qualifier in, Formula One history. So that might, because of how close it's going to be between Aston Martin, Mercedes, Red Bull, maybe Ferrari to a degree, that is going to maybe cost Alonso and Aston Martin a position or two in, in this session coming up in about an hour from now. So we'll see how it goes. But I think, put it this way, if George Russell was in that Aston Martin, I would say that Aston Martin definitely have got the second best car. So, we will see how that plays out. Again, third quickest, Mercedes. Fourth quickest, you'd have to say Red Bull. Fifth, Ferrari. Sixth, I would go Alpine. I'm pretty confident in that. And then 7th, I would go. Yeah, I'd go Williams just ahead of Sauber. Very close between Williams and Sauber. And then 9th, I would go with Haas. And then the slowest team would have to be Racing Bulls. The thing is, though, even if Racing Bulls are the slowest team, I could still see them ending up with both cars in, or not both cars in Q2, but I could easily see them getting a 12th or a 13th, even if they do have the slowest car in qualifying, purely because of maybe other drivers not doing the best of laps or whatever it may be. But yeah, that's what I think the pecking order is, and let's hope that Aston Martin are as quick as I think they are, and as quick as practice has shown us so far. But before I get on to your comments in chat, by the way, make sure to keep your comments coming in the chat because I am going to get onto them in a moment. Let me just quickly get into my predictions for qualifying. Qualifying, by the way, getting underway in about an hour from now. And here is my prediction. I'm going for a McLaren front row, Lando Norris on pole, from Oscar Piastri in second. Third, about a quarter of a second off, I think will be George Russell. Fourth, I'm going Alonso. Fifth, Verstappen. Sixth, Leclerc. I've accidentally put Leclerc as an Aston Martin driver. Sorry about that. And I've accidentally put Stroll as a Red Bull driver and Tsunoda as a Ferrari driver. So yeah, I've massively fucked up there. I am a bit tired, so yeah, that's why I've messed up there. Sorry about that. But yeah, Leclerc 6th, I'm going, and then Hamilton 7th, Tsunoda 8th, Stroll 9th, and Gasly, I think, will just about get into the top 10. So that's my top 10 prediction for qualifying. Let me know in the live chat or in the poll running in the chat. Who do you think takes pole, and what is, in general, your prediction for qualifying? Give me your top 5, top 10. Let me know in the chat over the next hour before we get into the session itself. But let me just wait until the next minute ticks over. And then we'll get the timer back on the screen so you guys can see how long we have left until we are back underway properly in 2025. And yeah, just waiting for the next minute to tick over. And taking, I would say quite a while, but obviously I know it's 60 seconds, but feels like quite a long 60 seconds. And good to see, by the way, a decent amount of you here already. And there you go. So 56 minutes is how long we have until qualifying gets underway at Zandvoort. Before, though, I get into your comments in the chat, I just want to say quickly, don't forget to subscribe for more content like this, because, of course, we do qualifying and race watch-alongs for, well, most Grand Prix. And one thing I can announce is, even though I am not doing a race watch-along tomorrow, I will be doing a podcast, though, on Monday, reviewing, of course, the Dutch Grand Prix, so make sure to check that out. Obviously, next week is the Italian Grand Prix at Monza, and I can announce that I will be doing both a qualifying and race watch along for next week's Italian Grand Prix, and the next Grand Prix after that, in 3 weeks from now, the Azerbaijan Grand Prix, I will also be doing a qualifying and race watch along for that Grand Prix. So, race watch alongs will be back next week at Monza, and then a couple of weeks after that again in Baku. So yeah, make sure to subscribe for more content like this. Make sure to smash the like button as well to show your support, and it does obviously help the channel in the algorithm, helps show me that you guys enjoy the content. Yeah, make sure to do that. Now, there's a couple things which I quickly want to mention or talk about before I get onto your comments. And again, make sure to keep those comments in the chat coming. I will get onto them in a moment. Yeah, there's a couple things I just want to get into before we go any further. Firstly, I want to announce that, and I know people have asked before about, Chaz, is there any way we can, is there any page you have to donate to or anything like that? I can announce that finally I do have a page or website where you can now donate and show your support for the channel. And I will, in a moment. Obviously there is a stream delay, so I'm going to wait just a few seconds to post this link so that it times well. But yeah, I now have a page where you guys can donate. The website's called Buy Me a Coffee. You guys may have heard of it. It's a website where, you guys can donate to the channel and show your support. The good thing about this website is, one, this website doesn't take as much of a cut from donations as YouTube does. YouTube takes basically half of whatever I earn. This website takes a bit less than that. But also with this website, Buy Me a Coffee, you can donate whatever amount you want. You can even, put a message with your donation, and you have the option to either do a one-time donation or you can make it a monthly thing. It's your choice, essentially. So I'll post the link in the chat. And yeah, if you guys want to support the channel, and support my work here, then make sure to go to that site and donate whatever amount that you want to. Again, it can be a one-time donation, monthly donation. You can do whatever you want. Of course, you don't have to donate if you don't want to. If you do want to donate, though, and support the channel, the link to that page will be in my description for all videos and streams from now on. So any video or stream that I do from now on, it will be in the description if you want to go to it and, and donate whatever amount that you want. So yeah, there you go. If you want to support the channel financially, then there is your avenue to do so. And the other thing I wanted to quickly mention is, of course, I did do some summer break content. I did 3 videos over the summer break. The 3 videos I planned to do. Thankfully, for the first time in a few years, I actually stuck to what I planned to do. And yeah, I did a driver lineup prediction video for 2027. I did a mid-season driver ranking video, and also a video on the championship battle. If you haven't seen those videos yet, there is a link to all 3 of those videos in the description. So if you want to go watch them, make sure to. They're all there in the description. And in terms of because obviously every live stream I like to do a bit of a channel update, just so you guys know what the plan is going forward. So obviously I'm not going to be doing a race watch along tomorrow. On Monday, again, there will be a podcast reviewing the Dutch Grand Prix. Next weekend, I'll be doing a qualifying and race watch along for the Italian Grand Prix. Regardless of the weather or whatever, I'll be doing it. And then, of course, there'll be a podcast on the Monday reviewing the events of the weekend. And then, in terms of the rest of the season, obviously I'll be covering the races, and there should still be some recorded videos, in there, in between some of the races as we go forward for the rest of the season. One thing I do want to warn you guys about, though, is in about a month from now, I will be starting my masters, my master's course for, what was it, writing for script and screen. That's the course I'm doing. It's an online course, thankfully, but I will be starting that in a month's time. So that might take time away from video making and might, cause me to not maybe upload as much or upload as quickly as maybe I have done in the last, 2-3 months. There will be a time though, not yet, but probably in a couple months from now, I will start to prepare for the winter break, because I do have a lot of plans for the winter break in terms of content that I have planned. There is one video, a very long video, historical F1 video, I would call it, that I've been working on for quite a while, that I'm hoping will come out in the winter break. Hopefully I'll be able to get that video done in the next month or so. And then, there's loads of other videos I've got planned as well. I mean, obviously I'll be doing, an end of season driver ranking video. That'll probably be one of the first, end of season videos I do. So I'll be, in terms of starting to create that end of season content, again, that'll probably begin in a couple months' time. So but in terms of the next month, the content on the channel should continue as it has been. Of course, doing the streams for the races, and then in between, when we have, say, a 2-week break in between races, there should still be at least one recorded video coming out, in between races. I've already got the next recorded video planned, which will come out between the Italian and Azerbaijan Grand Prix. Not going to reveal what it is, but it's already planned. Just got to wait until we're done with this Grand Prix and the next Grand Prix at Monza, and then I'll crack on with getting that video done. But that's, I guess, a channel update. And hope if you guys did, if you guys did watch any of my summer break content, I hope you enjoyed it. Hope it kept you entertained, and hope you liked it. So let me now go through your comments in the chat, and I'll go right back to the top. I'll just have a quick drink of water as well. And hello to everyone who, of course, is watching and also in the chat as well. Hello to Astro. Good to see you, obviously, one of the big-time regulars. Sarah Gara as well. Wildcon OVI as well. But let's see what you guys have to say. Astro asking, are they still saying big chance of this being wet? I don't know what they're saying in terms of what they think is going to happen, but I have looked at the weather forecast, a weather forecast for Zandvoort that I trust, not 100%. You can never trust any weather forecast, 100%. But the forecast I've seen says that qualifying today is going to be sunny and dry, bit windy, but sunny and dry. And then tomorrow, the race also looks like it's going to be dry, but it does look like it's going to rain in the morning. So any of the rubber laid down today will be washed away, which might make for a slightly more interesting race. Should wear the tyres out a bit more tomorrow. Make for probably a 2-stop race. But it's not going to be wet, unfortunately. If what do you call it? If it was going to be a wet, what do you call it? a wet race, if it was forecast for that, I would have done a race watch along. But I looked at the forecast yesterday, and it said it was going to be dry. So that's why I decided not to do a race watch along, because again, a dry race at Zandvoort is just not worth doing one for, unfortunately. Afternoon, Herman. Who says afternoon? Shazza and chat. Let me scroll down a bit further. And yeah, Astro, I can see there talking about it. Cadillac, who of course will be the 11th and new team on the grid next year. They have, I don't think they've officially announced it, but pretty much it has been confirmed that Cadillac's lineup next year will be Valtteri Bottas and Sergio Perez. When it comes to Bottas, not surprised. We knew that probably months ago that he was going to be at Cadillac and was going to be back on the grid. And to be honest, I'm not really that surprised at Sergio Perez, because I think Perez, in terms of Perez not being on the grid this year, I don't think Perez was actually ready to step away. I think he only stepped away because Red Bull didn't want to have him in the car anymore. But now, looking back, now that we've seen, Liam Lawson and now Yuki Tsunoda in that Red Bull, Perez's time in that Red Bull is not looking so bad now, is it? From last year and the year before. And I think Perez knows, I won't say secretly knows that, but knew that all along, that, his performance level wasn't actually that bad. It was just the car being so wildly different to drive compared to what Max had. And yeah, Perez clearly was not ready to give up on his Formula One career, which I can't blame him for. From Cadillac, from their point of view, having Bottas and Perez as a lineup is, I think, a good thing. Yeah, they could have gone for some new, fresh, exciting lineup, gone for an exciting rookie or something. But next year for Cadillac is all about them getting onto the pace of the other teams. Because next season is such a big rule change, most likely Cadillac are going to be not just the slowest team, they're going to be pretty far off the pace. Even though, yes, they've got a lot of money, they're pumping a lot of money into the project, doesn't mean they're going to be quick whatsoever next year. If you're a new team and you're going to be slow, what you need is experienced drivers at your team who will be able to push you in the right direction in terms of doing the right things, not just with, design, but, just, direction of the handling of the car, stuff like that, and just the way the team should operate. Because obviously, Valtteri Bottas, he started in Formula One 12 years ago. Sergio Perez has been in and around Formula One for 14 years. Next year will be, 15 years since his debut year. So, that's a good thing for the Cadillac team. And they will be, Bottas and Perez, a good representation of where Cadillac are at, because they're not going to crash a lot. They're not going to make loads of mistakes. Yes, they might not be getting the maximum out of the car, because I mean Bottas is past his best. I don't think there's any doubt about that. That that Valtteri Bottas is not what he was 6 years ago, 7 years ago, or Sergio Perez. You could say probably not quite what he was maybe 3 or 4 years ago, but they're still good enough to where they can show or get out of the car. If there is performance there to be got, that they can get it out of that car, enough of it to show some sort of potential, if that makes sense. So yeah, I have no problem with the driver lineup. Hopefully they go well. I have no expectations for them next season. I'm not saying they're going to be, HRT level of bad. If you don't know what I mean by HRT, I'm not talking about that HRT. I'm talking about the F1 team HRT that was in Formula One back in the V8 era. They're not going to be that bad where they're not qualifying for for races. I have seen some certain people saying that they don't think they'll be able to qualify maybe for a race or two. I don't think they're going to be that bad purely because the amount of money going into the project. I just don't think that's possible unless there is sheer incompetence at play. I just don't think that's possible. So yeah, Cadillac again. I don't have any expectations with them, but if they can be, next year, if they can be basically like what Sauber were last year, where even though yes, Sauber were last in the championship, they were still mixing it with teams at the back of the grid and fighting with a couple cars here or there. If they can do that, then that for me is enough. Because then in 2027, if that's what they're doing in 2026, let's say they finish last in the championship, maybe they score a point in the championship, and they're consistently 15th, 16th at best, they will then make a massive leap forward in 2027. I have no doubt about it. And remember, they will be Ferrari powered next year. So if Ferrari turn up with a good power unit, they will benefit from that quite a bit. Especially if you have others like Ford or Honda who don't quite get it right. So yeah, we'll see. It's exciting times to have a new team on the grid. We've been crying out for a new team on the grid for ever since Manor were gone, and we have it. And from what I'm hearing and seeing from certain journalists in the F1 sphere, looks like we could get a 12th F1 team. Maybe not in 2026, but maybe at the very end of this decade, we could get a 12th team on the grid. So keep your eyes peeled. Astro saying both very experienced, but was hoping they'd pick a Yuki Tsunoda or Jack Doohan or Mick Schumacher. Tsunoda, I think probably, if they did offer Tsunoda a drive, I think Tsunoda probably is right to, if he did say reject it, I think he would have been right to, because there's too many unknowns with Cadillac, to accept an offer. And even though Tsunoda's doing horribly at Red Bull are more of a sure bet, obviously, than Cadillac. Even though next year I expect Red Bull to be quite far off the pace, and I think Red Bull next year will probably be a midfield team at best. And yeah, upper midfield, let's say. Let's find some other comments here. Astro saying his prediction for pole. And he says, if wet and going bold, Alonso for pole. And then Piastri second, Russell third, Hamilton fourth, Ocon fifth, Bortoletto sixth, Hulkenberg seventh, Antonelli eighth, Norris ninth, Tsunoda 10th. That would be absolutely bonkers. But unfortunately, it doesn't look like we're getting any wet weather for qualifying. So, yeah. But I think we'll have an exciting session though. Behind the two McLarens, I think we'll have an exciting session. It'll be a close competitive one, no doubt. Let me just scroll. Down a bit. A rounded protocol says, hi, so glad to see you. Heat wave made me bad, but fine now. Yeah, what was it? Yeah, last weekend, I went to a football match and stayed in the city where the match was, and oh my god, was it hot last week? I was I It took me quite a while to get to my hotel from the ground. It was like an hour of walking from the stadium. But every time I went walking somewhere, all I did was just drip sweat all the time. But it was unbelievable weather last last weekend here in the UK and Southwest. It was so hot. Not the hottest of the year, the hottest part of the year we've had here in the southwest of England was I think it was the week, yeah, it was the week after the British Grand Prix, so second week of July. That was unbelievably hot. I think it was the Friday and the Saturday of that particular week. Again, it was the week after the British Grand Prix. It was so unbelievably hot. But yeah, nowhere near as hot in my part of the UK this weekend for sure. It's raining outside and quite windy as well. It's back to being typically British, let's say, the weather. But yeah, last weekend, oh my, it was like living in Spain or Italy or Greece, or you know what I mean, one of these unbelievably hot countries. Um, Let me see if I can find some other comments. Let me just scroll down a bit further. Good to see Will in the chat. Astro asking, wonder if Vettel will ever return to F1. Doubt it, but he could have had a longer career, still maybe a small chance. I don't think he will. The only window of opportunity for him returning was this Audi project, and as we know, Audi's lineup next year is Hulkenberg and Bortoletto. So yeah, Vettel is done. I think there is a chance Vettel, not yet, but maybe in a few years, he'll maybe enter WEC or maybe even DTM if that's still going. But yeah, he's not coming back to Formula One, and he shouldn't, because he's not gonna be on the same pace as he was before. If he came back, he would be just a midfield driver with a massive reputation. That's all he would be. And that would be almost, disrespectful to the legacy of Sebastian Vettel and what we remember of him, obviously, when he was at his best. But before I get onto any more comments, and I will get onto them, don't you worry, I'm just going to post a link of the stream out one more time. And then we'll get on to more of your comments, as we've got only half an hour to go until qualifying is underway. Let me just hold on, post a message quick. Come join us here to Watchalong qualifying at Zandvoort. So there you go. And yeah, it's absolutely flown by this stream so far. Good to see Brabham says hi guys, and yes, they have confirmed it. Yeah, I couldn't remember if it was actually confirmed, but yeah. And like I said, it's a smart lineup for Cadillac, and it does actually kind of remind me of the lineup that Toyota went for in 2002 when they made their debut. I mean, Alan McNish wasn't an experienced Formula One driver. He had never raced in Formula One before that year in 2002, but Alan was experienced motorsport wise. And obviously, they had Mika Salo in the other car, who was very experienced by that point. And, you know, it was a decent lineup to have for Cadillac, or for Toyota that first year. Even though they didn't do that well in the championship, they if you actually go look at what the pace of the car was like generally, it was actually a decent first year, but they just unfortunately couldn't convert a lot of that into points finishes, Toyota. Wazir Khan says 50 to 70 laps. Cadillac, I hope they know what they are doing. Barham saying I'm not really sure who else they could have picked. I mean, there's, the fantasy picks that people wanted, Colton Herter or Pato O'Ward, Alex Palou, who of course is, I think, now a 4-time IndyCar champion. What an unbelievable driver he is. Really hope we'll see Alex in Formula One at some point, but yeah, I'm not sure if we will ever, see him come across the pond, let's say. I mean, who else could they have gone for? There was Felipe Drugovich, who has been desperate to get onto the grid ever since he won the F2 championship. But I think rightly, nobody has gone for him or selected him, because we all know in reality that even though he won the F2 championship, he's not Formula One worthy. He's not good enough for Formula One. I mean, he would. I think Felipe deserves the chance to at least prove me wrong. But I think ultimately, if he did get a chance, he would prove that, he's not Formula One level. Felipe needs to, I would say, go to either IndyCar or WEC, or maybe even Formula E. That's his level. And again, there's nothing wrong with that. There's drivers in IndyCar and WEC who could have been in Formula One, but ultimately weren't good enough and have had great success. Look at Antonio Giovinazzi, for example, in WEC with Ferrari. Great example. Um, Will say Cadillac will be HRT with Bottas. Bottas is not that bad. When I know last year at Sauber, he was a bit poor, I will admit, but he wasn't. We've seen quite a bit worse in the last few years than what he was like last year. So yeah, he's fine. Plus, we have to remember, even though he was a bit poor, the Sauber car was dreadful. So even if he was performing at peak levels, would it have mattered? Probably still wouldn't have scored really any points, even if he was at his absolute peak of his powers. So we have to remember that. Sorry for the silence there, just down in my water bottle. As we've got just over 20 more minutes until the session. Um, Bravum says Danny Rick would come back for anyone now. Well, maybe he would have a couple years ago, but by the sounds of it, there was an interview done, was it a few weeks ago with Ricardo? And I think they asked him about, his interest in the Formula One return. And by the sounds of it, Ricardo is absolutely done with F1 and probably motorsport in general. He is just living life, enjoying life, loving life in general. So yeah, Ricardo, I think, is absolutely done with Formula One. I'm sure Cadillac would have loved to have Ricardo in their car. If Ricardo truly was desperate to get back on the grid, I'm sure Daniel would have been, uh, one of the drivers. Probably would have been confirmed a while ago if Daniel was actually desperate to be on the grid. But yeah, Ricardo is absolutely done. No way is he coming back. And I think what killed it for Daniel was his stint at AlphaTauri / Racing Bulls, which that stint essentially confirmed to him that he is past his best, and he obviously isn't interested in continuing to race if he's not at his best anymore. I think that was the only reason he wanted to get, back in after leaving McLaren, was because he wanted to see if it was just down to, just not fitting with McLaren and the team, or whether he truly was washed, let's say. But it turns out that he was, washed, which quite dramatic, I must say. The the transition from peak Ricardo to past his best, because in 2020, Daniel Ricciardo was one of the best drivers on the planet, without doubt. He was unbelievable that season. But then in 2021, even though he won a race, he was nowhere near the same driver. It was pretty much an instant thing with Ricciardo. Right. Let's have a look for some other comments. Fast Furious as Perez is a joke. Cheers for that, Bremen, by the way, saying I'll deal with you tomorrow. Um, Hello to Crystal Racing. Good to see you. As he's just entered the chat. Brabham says Antonelli should be in Williams for a few years. Maybe, maybe this Mercedes drive has come too soon for him. But I do think that Antonelli's debut season has been made out to be a lot worse than it actually is, or has been. We have to remember there has been some races where he got unlucky in terms of he would have scored points if it wasn't for an issue. At Imola, he was heading for a few points, had an issue. Spain, he was going to finish, I think, 6th, had an issue. Another Grand Prix was the British Grand Prix at Silverstone, where his team just had the wrong strategy all the time, and that really cost Antonelli from having any sort of good result. And yeah, there has been certain races as of late where he hasn't been good enough. Obviously, the Red Bull Ring where he crashed into Verstappen. At Spa, he was nowhere all weekend, and then in Hungary, he was also nowhere all weekend. But considering he's 18 years old and who his teammate is, I don't think his season has been, again, as bad as others may claim it's been. But he is definitely needing moral support. Is Antonelli, no doubt about that. And we'll see how the rest of his season goes. This weekend so far hasn't looked great for him. Given how Mercedes look, though, Antonelli really should be getting in the top 6 on the grid today if Mercedes are as quick today as I expect them to be. So there is quite a bit to be, I wouldn't say achieved today, but there is a decent grid position to be had for Antonelli if he can get it together today, and I hope he can. But in terms of what his future should be, if you didn't watch my 2027 driver lineup prediction video, which I uploaded a few weeks ago, you would have seen that I predicted a certain change for Antonelli in that. I won't reveal what. I'll let you guys find out in the video if you haven't seen the video yet. But I still believe in him. So I'm not gonna sell on him, if you know what I mean. Right, let's find some more comments here as we've got 15 minutes to go. This build up has absolutely flown by. It feels like I started the stream like 10 minutes ago, but we've already been going, what, an hour and 15? Um, Astro saying with Ricardo, if Ricardo had been given that Red Bull seat instead of Perez, history might have been very different. Of course, Ricardo broke his hand a few years ago with AlphaTauri. I think that might have done him. That and maybe COVID too. I don't think that broken. I don't think that broken hand. I don't think that contributed really to him being past his best. I think he was already past his best by that point. Didn't help, of course. No injury is going to help, but I think he was already past it by then. He did say in an interview I can't remember when he did the interview, but it was to do with his debut season at McLaren, and the whoever the interviewer was essentially asked him, why or what do you think has contributed to your debut season at McLaren being so poor? Again, so poor, even though he did actually win a race, which a lot of drivers that season who had good seasons were unable to do, such as, Charles Leclerc, Carlos Sainz, Lando Norris. But yeah, in general, we know it was a poor season by Ricardo standards. And one of the things he did say was, um, what do you call it? I think it wasn't too much of an issue when COVID first broke out, because I think when COVID, when everything shut down, especially the Formula One season, they were in Australia when everything shut down. So Ricardo could just stay at home until the F1 season got going again, which was what, like 3 months later. And then Ricardo obviously then had to live in Europe to make sure that, he stayed in the COVID bubble. But then when he left Renault, which would have been what, mid-December, and then the new 2021 season, probably, preseason testing for 2021 was what, towards the end of February, I think it was. What Ricardo said was that he wasn't able to go home for Christmas like he normally does. And that really affected him. Because normally, and I think they've even shown it on Drive to Survive, in the off season, he liked to go back to Australia. Of course, around Christmas time, it's summer in that part of the world. And yeah, he would go back there with his family on whatever ranch or whatever they had, and spend time with them, enjoy life, enjoy a break. But he couldn't do that in that particular period because of COVID, and of course Australia shut themselves off from the rest of the world and went for basically the zero COVID strategy. Eventually, I think they gave up on it a couple of years later once the vaccine had fully rolled out and that. But yeah, that really, by the sounds of it, affected him in terms of his mental health and also his preparation for his debut season. So I think that really didn't help his momentum and his mood going into his debut year. Whether or how much that contributed to him, not having a good year, I don't know. Only he knows truly. But yeah, but by the sounds of it, that really did affect him quite a bit, and I can see why, especially. And I'll never know what it feels like, but when you're, and it's not too difficult. Obviously, he would have been living in the UK, which at least is still an English speaking country, but being that far away from home during such a difficult time in our history here on this planet, I can't imagine really just how difficult that would have been when all the other drivers would have probably been able to go home and see their loved ones and and all that. So yeah. Um right, let me find, say, 2 or 3 more comments, and then I think we'll get into this session. Astro says Piastri is better than Russell, but Russell is better than Norris in my view. I agree that Piastri and Russell are both better than Norris, but I think Russell is the best of those three, 100%. Definitely when it comes to raw pace, I think George Russell is absolutely the best of those three. And in terms of raw pace, Russell, I think arguably the only drivers better than Russell, again, when it comes to raw pace, is probably Max and Charles. Again, arguably. You could argue that Russell is the absolute quickest. He is insanely quick, is George Russell. Especially over a qualifying lap. And you'll see evidence, I'm sure, of that today. Astro saying Antonelli has shown flashes of promise. I haven't written them off yet. Recent form been bad, but overall not so bad. I think we also need to account with Antonelli that, you know, the Mercedes car, it's not like it's a championship winning car. So, I mean, what really, you know, what should we be expecting with Antonelli? What he was doing in the early races up until we got to, say, Imola or Monaco, he was doing pretty much what you would expect him to be doing, given, again, that he's 18 and that, you know, who his teammate is. And yeah, these last few races, not so great. Obviously, it's not been doing anywhere near as well as he probably should have been doing. But, you know, let's not pretend like the Mercedes car is, you know, a title winning car, because it's not. There have been some weekends where they've been quite slow. And some of those races have been as of late. So let's, you know, factor that in. I will sorry, I will say one driver that I don't think has got anywhere near enough criticism for how bad their season has been is Carlos Sainz. I don't get why he's largely got a pass from a lot of people. He has been absolutely terrible, especially when we know what he's capable of. So yeah, Sainz, again, I not been impressed whatsoever with Carlos. Apparently it's 2-0 to Chelsea, and yes, it is. Thank goodness. Important that we win that game. But let me just go through one final comment. By the way, hello to Rook, and I hope as well that you saw my message. Hope I didn't bother you with it. But yeah, I hope you've had a good summer break, mate. Hope you've enjoyed yourself. But yeah, let me just find one more comment. And Crystal Racing saying Ricardo never should have joined McLaren, especially during the pandemic. In hindsight, Probably not, but when he made the decision to join, I don't think he really understood that in terms of, the world we were living in at that point. And I don't think really anyone expected it to be as difficult as it was, but there you go. Anyway, make sure to keep your comments coming. And we have got only 4 minutes now to go until qualifying begins. So let's get into a final couple important bits of information before we get into the session. Firstly, when it comes to the championship, going into this weekend, Oscar Piastri leading only by 9 points from his teammate Lando Norris. Max Verstappen in third, George Russell in fourth, quite a bit closer, only 15 points behind now. Charles Leclerc then in fifth, Lewis Hamilton sixth, Antonelli in seventh, only 10 points clear of Alex Albon in eighth, Hulkenberg then in ninth, and Esteban Ocon still in the top 10. On the constructors' side, McLaren are almost exactly 300 points clear of Ferrari, who are second by a decent amount over Mercedes third. Red Bull being cut adrift in that fight for second, as Red Bull lie in fourth. Williams in fifth, only 18 points clear of Aston Martin, who look pretty likely, if they keep this pace up, to finish fifth in the championship. Aston Martin, though, only a point clear of Sauber, who are seventh. Eighth, Racing Bulls. Ninth, Haas, and 10th. A bit off the, I won't say the pace, but a bit off points-wise, Alpine. But let's get into some key stats regarding the front-running teams going into this session. McLaren's last pole position at Zandvoort was, of course, last year in 2024 for Lando Norris. Lando was on pole by a massive amount. Can he take pole yet again? That is their only pole here at Zandvoort since we returned to the track in 2021. And last year it was first and third in qualifying. Surely they can do one better than that and make it a front row lockout. For Red Bull, their last pole here was a couple years ago with the home driver, Max Verstappen. Red Bull have took 3 poles here at Zandvoort since 2021, all with, of course, Verstappen. Last year, it was second and fifth in qualifying. I think Red Bull would be very happy with that today if they could get that type of result. Apologies, just had to clear my throat. For Ferrari, it's been, well, a very long time since their last pole position at Zandvoort. 50 years. That is how long it has been since they last had pole at the Dutch Grand Prix. And that was with Niki Lauda. And actually, I looked into that Grand Prix 1975. That 1975 Dutch Grand Prix was won by James Hunt. And that was actually James Hunt's first ever win in Formula One. And, bit of F1 trivia, it was the only win for the Hesketh Formula One team, the infamous Hesketh team that James Hunt raced for. And Ferrari this year have only had 1 pole position. That was in Hungary a few weeks ago. Last year here qualified 6th and 10th. Not looking like they're going to improve on that this weekend. And for Mercedes, Mercedes have never had a pole position at Zandvoort. This season, they've took 1 pole position. That was in Montreal a few months ago. And last year, it was 4th and 11th there in qualifying. Looks like they might be getting around about that result here today. But here we go. And qualifying at a very sunny Zandvoort. Still quite windy. As I have messed that up quite a bit. Let me just get that text back. There you go. Q1. We are now underway for qualifying. And again, a sunny Zandvoort. Bit blustery. The conditions are not ideal, but it's dry. as we're getting some cars onto the track. Tsunoda in the Red Bull, the first car on circuit. Tsunoda has never really had any type of result to speak of at this track, so I'm not expecting anything amazing from Tsunoda, but he has looked decent in practice so far. And there you go. 17 minutes remain in the first part of qualifying. And good to see, decent amount of you watching. And before I go any further, make sure to smash the like button. We're on 38 likes. Let's try and get up to 70 or 60 or 70 plus likes if we can. So smash that like button if you haven't already. It obviously does help the channel in the algorithm and helps show me that you guys obviously like the content. So make sure to smash that like button. As currently on the broadcast, we're looking at the Haas of Oliver Bearman, I'm pretty sure it is. Haas have been okay this weekend. Nothing special. They're in the mix, but I wouldn't say they're looking to be the front of the midfield pack. Look like they're more towards the rear of it. As here, Oliver Bearman starts his first qualifying lap at Zandvoort in Formula 1 as Ocon complaining on the radio that the wind is a bit gustier. Yeah, the wind has been a problem so far this weekend, and it's also going to be a bit blustery tomorrow, but not as blustery as it is today. There's a lot of smoke coming out the back of that Haas, and I'm not sure if it's the car rubbing along the ground or if it's because maybe of an overfill on the oil, or maybe Bearman has got some sort of engine issue developing as he understeers through turn 8, I think that was. Tsunoda quickest at the moment on a 110.6. And yeah, just getting the first lap times in. Oliver Bearman now goes quickest on a 1 minute 10.2. The quickest lap time of the weekend so far, just to let you guys know, was done in practice 3. It was a 108.9. I'm expecting in this session the best time in Q1 to be probably a mid 1 minute 9. As Lewis Hamilton is doing some purple sectors as Leclerc goes second, interestingly, to Bearman. But yeah, a mid 1 minute 9 is what the best lap time in Q1 should be, as Lewis Hamilton only barely goes quicker than Oliver Bearman. I was going to say, that is as an Aston Martin there goes off into the gravel at what is pretty much the final corner, as Lance Stroll, he's come back onto the track though, he's all good. Yeah, a mid 1 minute 9 is what the best lap time here in Q1 should be. In terms of the cutoff zone, you're going to want to do probably either very low 1 minute 10, say a 110.0, or better to get through to Q2. So, for example, if you do a 1 minute 9 point whatever, lap time, you should then be good enough to make it into Q2. So, good start there for Bearman, already doing a 1 minute 10.2 with his first lap. As Stroll touched the grass on the entry, went too wide on the entry, spun into the gravel, hit the barrier with his front wing, but luckily bounced off of it in the right way, that he was able to get back to the pits and thankfully not cause a red flag or anything. So yeah, anyone who goes quicker than a 1 minute 10.0, like I said, should be good enough to get through to the next part of qualifying, as we're seeing Max Verstappen out on the track. And Verstappen, very quick lap so far. This is a really strong opening lap. This is going to put Max comfortably into the 1 minute 9s. As he opens DRS down the start finish straight to the line. And he does a 1 minute 9.7. That is a very, very good first run. Quite ominous, I must say, to immediately go that quick with your first run. So Verstappen to the top of the timesheets. We know Max is capable of special things. What will he cook up for us today? We will find out. As we're just seeing a replay of what Stroll did, and yeah, he did a mistake that's been made a few times at that corner. Just too wide a turn in, went too wide on the entry, and it spun him round, and he actually went rear wing in first. I don't know what fell off the car. I don't know if it was the front wing or if it was something else, but Lance Stroll was really giving his mechanics a tough job, and that is really poor what Lance did, because that car is capable of very good things today. Really, Stroll should be getting in the top 10 at least with that car. And he might not even make it out Q1. We've only got 10 minutes to go. Can they get that car repaired? As we're looking here at George Russell, quarter of a second off Verstappen after the first two sectors. This is a good start also for Russell to qualifying. Let's see what lap time he does as he comes round the banking to the line. And yeah, that's a good start for George Russell. So he goes second, almost exactly 0.3 of a second off the pace of Verstappen. Here comes Lando Norris, surely to go quickest. And yes, he does by 0.3 of a second, a 109.4. What a hot pace from McLaren straight away. As Piastri goes a 0.1 slower in second. So McLaren already proving their dominance. And surely there's no way they can be stopped. Today, as here comes Fernando Alonso. What can he do out of the gates? He goes fourth on a 109.9. A very good first run for Alonso. And that should already be good enough to put him in Q2. As Isaac Hadjar goes 7th. Antonelli has actually gone quicker than teammate Russell. So, very good start for Antonelli, which hopefully will be good enough to see him into Q2. Hadjar is up to 7th. Lawson up to 8th. So, good start for the Racing Bulls team. One team under pressure immediately is Ferrari, who have not started well with their lap times. Of course, they will improve, but will it be enough improvement? As Esteban Ocon goes up to 14th. I'll update the order in a moment. As we've got now the two Williamses, 11th and 12th, as Bortoletto only goes 14th. But he does go ahead of Charles Leclerc, as Hulkenberg goes 8th. That's a good improvement by Hulkenberg. who's looking to have a good qualifying for once. Bortoletto, his teammate's been having a lot of the good qualifyings as of late. As Pierre Gasly goes 6th. That is a very good run from Gasly. So, in the drop zone now, as Tsunoda improves and goes up to... Well, he was up to 15th. He's now down to 16th. As Leclerc now climbs out of the drop zone, but only goes 14th. So yeah, in the drop zone, Bortoletto, Tsunoda, Colapinto, Ocon, and Stroll. Lewis Hamilton bails out of a lap and comes back into the pits. Yeah, both Ferraris here are at risk of being eliminated in Q1. Leclerc, that lap has put him 14th, and he's only a few hundredths of a second ahead of Bortoletto, who's in the drop zone. So alarm bells must be ringing at Scuderia because they look like they're in big trouble here. Not saying they'll be eliminated, but it's possible. They've not put themselves in a position to be comfortable here whatsoever. As that's a replay of Lawson on the exit of the very banked hairpin of turn 3. Going wide slightly on the exit. And here's a replay of Lewis Hamilton. That's why he backed off with his lap. He went slightly too wide in turn 12. As it's turned out to be a cracking day at Zandvoort, despite the wind. And obviously the Dutch Verstappen army out in force. As they're looking on the broadcast at Fernando Alonso, currently 4th. And looking at the lap times, unless there's going to be a massive track improvement, I think Alonso's already just about safe from elimination. As we're looking out, Yuki Tsunoda currently in the drop zone. Surely he can make his way through. Astro asking, definitely no rain coming in? No, absolutely no chance of rain. Not a cloud to be seen in the skyline and at the seaside at Zandvoort. As we're looking at the McLaren of Oscar Piastri, who is currently 2nd, but leading, most importantly, the championship. And Lando does look like the quicker driver around this track. For Piastri, though, if he's going to win tomorrow's race, which is all that matters for the championship, he has to make sure he's at least 2nd on the grid. Because if Lando tomorrow has a poor start, which we know he is prone to having, he had one at this track last year, then Oscar can take advantage. But Oscar last year ended up 3rd here on the grid and did not really deliver on the pace that was clearly there in the McLaren. But he's a lot better this year as Piastri starts a new lap. McLaren obviously already comfortably through to the next session. Piastri just doing a banker for what's to come later here in qualifying. Let's see how much of an improvement Piastri can do, as we're just over 2.5 minutes away from the end of this session. Who will get eliminated? Looks like Lance Stroll, by the way, is done. He's not in the car, not even got his helmet on. So well done, Lance. You've absolutely fucked yourself over. And once again shown us why you should not be on the grid. As Oscar comes to the middle sector, and he's in a purple middle sector. He's a 10th up on Lando. This lap time, probably, if Piastri goes quickest, will be probably a 1 minute 9.3, maybe a 1:9.2 at best, which is a pretty hot pace for Q1. And he does a 1 minute 9.3. Oscar Piastri goes quickest. McLaren looking very, very good. As we're looking at Alex Albon here on his final run in Q1 as George Russell goes third. And yeah, Albon, good first sector. Williams have been pretty strong in the first sector though this weekend. It's the rest of the lap where they need to deliver. As Antonelli goes fifth. The Mercedes have got both cars through. The Williams understeering through turn 10. As Hadjar up to 7th. And this is a good lap for Albon, which I think is going to see him get through to Q2 as Carlos Sainz's teammate goes 8th. Which I think is probably good enough. Here comes Alex Albon, who goes 5th. And yes, that is a brilliant lap. And he's definitely through to Q2. So, yeah, both Williamses should now be through to the next part of qualifying. As Pierre Gasly goes 7th. He is through, surely, to Q2 as well. As we're looking at Leclerc, half a second he is behind Piastri after the first 2 sectors. This lap might get Leclerc through, but not comfortably. As Lewis Hamilton goes 8th. Here comes Leclerc, who goes 9th. Which I think that will probably just about see Leclerc get through. Bortoleto, 13th. The checkered flag is now fallen. These are your final laps. As Ocon having a bit of a rough ride through turn 12. Currently in 19th. Can he somehow drag this Haas car into Q2 as Liam Lawson goes 5th. What a lap by the Kiwi. As Ocon only 16th. He's out. As Colapinto goes 15th. Behrman has come into the pits. Tsunoda goes up to P12. And Hulkenberg, the last one to come to the line. He's currently in the drop zone. Can he get himself out? No, he does not. And yet again, he is out-qualified by teammate Gabriel Bortoleto. But that is all she wrote for Q1. And let's go through your drivers that have made it through to the second part of qualifying. Piastri, Norris, Russell, Verstappen, Lawson, Albon, Antonelli, Gasly, Hamilton, Leclerc, Alonso, Tsunoda, Hadjar, Sainz, Bortoleto, and knocked out in Q1, Franco Colapinto, Nico Hulkenberg, Esteban Ocon, Oliver Behrman, and Lance Stroll. And Q2 will be underway in about 3 to 4 minutes from now. Obviously, Lance Stroll, absolutely shocking performance from him, but he'll never get punished for it because his daddy owns the team. We know that. Haas, absolutely terrible. I think they could have got a car into Q2 there. They underperformed, quite frankly. Colapinto, 16th, disappointing. Should be doing better. The Alpine clearly has good pace. He's not delivered it. Hulkenberg will be disappointed yet again to be out-qualified by his teammate. But good for Bortoletto to out-qualify Hulkenberg again. The one impressive thing, though, for me, towards the end of that session, is Alonso. Ended up in 11th. He didn't do a final run. So he could have gone a lot quicker. So watch out for Fernando Alonso. And also Max Verstappen. Max Verstappen also did not do a final run there. Keep your eyes on those two. It looks like they've got a lot of pace of Verstappen and Alonso. And yeah, Q2 should be pretty interesting, especially when it comes to Ferrari, because Ferrari do not look very quick at all. And yeah, we await the beginning of the next part of qualifying. Which will be underway in a moment. And as we wait, I'll just get the next bit of graphics ready. So, yeah, whoever's out between 11th and 5th, or, 11th, 12th, 13th, 14th, or 15th, whoever's in that position or in those positions at the end of Q2, as you guys know, will be eliminated from this session and will not make the top 10 shootout. Fast Furious is strong, can use the excuse of his hand to retire from F1 at the end of the season. I thought that hit that little hand injury thing earlier in the season, I thought was a bit of a convenient excuse. And yeah, I don't buy it for a second. It is so obvious to see that the guy is just awful. If Aston Martin want to be a serious team, they've got to get rid. End of story. But will they? That is the question. Will they do what is necessary? Glizzy asking what happened to Aston. No, they had good pace all three practice sessions. There is good pace there. Like I said, Alonso did not do a second run in Q1. If he did, Alonso would have been probably in the top 5. So there is good pace there. Don't worry. Trust in L Plan, and L Plan will deliver. By the way, again, make sure to vote in the poll running in the chat, as we've had just over 1,000 votes on the poll asking who will take pole position for the Dutch Grand Prix. Your options are Norris, Piastri, Verstappen and Alonso. Who do you think takes pole out of those 4 drivers? Let me know. Also, make sure, or not make sure, but I'll quickly plug it again, as it is the first time I've done a stream since setting it up. If you guys want to support the channel financially, or, show your thanks, or, again, just support the channel in general, make sure to go to the link that Rook will hopefully post in the chat in a moment, which is a donation page you guys can go to called Buy Me a Coffee, where you guys can donate whatever amount you want. You can make it a monthly amount if you want to, make it a usual thing, or if you just want it to be a one-time amount, you can, donate to the channel and, again, show your support for what we do, for my work, and just, support in general. And also, it's better, that page, than the YouTube donation, because YouTube take, I think, is it 45% of earnings when this website takes a bit less than that. So if you want to support the channel financially, then make sure to go to that page. And again, you can donate whatever amount you want, even include a message with your donation. And again, if you want to make it a monthly amount, it's your choice. If you want to only do a one-time payment, you can do that. It's there if you want to show your support. And thank you if you do. Bradham saying, has anyone else seen that video of basically all the drivers ignoring Stroll's social situations? I have seen that. Not a surprise that no one really likes him. He doesn't really come across as a sociable person, I'll be honest. Which, I mean, if he doesn't want to be sociable, that's his prerogative. But you can tell the other drivers don't like him, which is their right at the end of the day. Q2, by the way, has begun. I forgot to sync up the timer at the 14-minute mark. Apologies about that. I am, though, going to sync it up at the 13-minute mark, and I'll get that timer on screen for you in about 10 seconds' time, as Charles Leclerc has started his first run in Q2. And there you go. 13 minutes remain in the second part of qualifying as Leclerc starts his lap. What I wanted to get into quickly, though, as the two Ferraris are the only cars on track right now, the best time we should be seeing in this session probably will be either a low 1:09 or a very late 1:08. So keep your eye on that. And in terms of getting through to Q3, you're going to have to do probably a 1:09.5 or better to get through to Q3. So let's see who can do that. Ferrari, we know, normally in their first run of Q2, put used tyres on. So let's see if that is the case as they come to the line. And yeah, Leclerc 1:10.0, which would indicate used tyres. As here comes Lewis Hamilton, who does a 1:10.1. So yeah, that's indicating that both Ferraris are on used tyres. And if they were on fresh tyres, that'd be what? Probably about a mid 1:09. So yeah, Ferrari's pace looks to be good enough to get through to Q3, as Leclerc here had to avoid some sort of animal running across the track. Yeah, Ferrari's pace looks good enough to get to Q3, but I wouldn't say it's comfortably good enough to get through. Still going to be a bit close. As we've got a bit of a queue at the end of the pit lane, as now all the other cars are coming out onto the circuit. And we'll see what they can do. Again, the absolute best lap time in this session should be a very low 1:09 or a very late 1:08. Sorry, by the way, if you can hear my noisy chair. Probably need to get a new one, to be honest. But yeah, I'm too lazy to actually go and get one. As here is George Russell, Mr. Saturday himself, who's looked good so far, was third in Q1. And yeah, he's been strong this weekend. And he's looking good. Getting the best out of the Mercedes car, which is all you can ask. And he's almost 0.2 up on Leclerc after the first sector. Very strong start. What's Max doing for the first sector? Wow, what a first sector from Max. 3.5 up. Unbelievable first sector from Max. As Russell, understeering and a bit of oversteer through turn 10. Turn 10 proving a difficult corner. It is quite difficult, that corner, especially with the wind, as Max has a bit of oversteer on the exit of that corner as well. And Max is now 3/4 of a second up on Leclerc. This is an unbelievable lap from Max, considering it's the first lap in Q2. Russell is going to come to the line, and he does a 1 minute 9.6, which is a good lap. Here comes Max Verstappen, though, a 1 minute 9.1. What a lap. Again, considering that's the first lap in Q2, that is a stunning lap time. Half a second quicker than Mercedes. Dare I say, is Max Verstappen in the fight for pole position? We will find out, but I'm getting a feeling that Max might be on one today. He's looked very ominously quick so far, as Liam Lawson goes 5th. Yuki Tsunoda goes 3rd. As Lando Norris has done a purple first sector. Can McLaren show some strong pace? Norris has not done a purple middle sector, interestingly. As Alex Albon goes 5th. Carlos Sainz goes into 7th place. As Lando Norris to the line does a 1 minute 8.8, 1/4 of a second quicker than Verstappen. That is a brilliant time from McLaren. So McLaren still appear to be just a bit too far ahead of Verstappen and Red Bull. As Bortoletto goes 9th. So Leclerc 10th, Hamilton 11th now. Of course, Ferrari did their times on used tyres as Isaac Hadjar goes 3rd. What a lap by the young Frenchman. 3rd. And that's putting him in a really good position to get through to Q3. As here comes Fernando Alonso. Only 8th. 1 minute 9.6. I expected more, I'll admit, of Alonso there. As Alonso immediately down to 9th place because Oscar Piastri has gone 2nd. About 0.08 of a second slower than his teammate. So it's Leclerc, now on fresh tyres, has gone 4th. With a 1 minute 9.2, which is a lot more like it. And Hamilton goes about half a tenth quicker. That is the strongest pace that Ferrari have shown all weekend. And Ferrari, suddenly, it looks a lot more encouraging from their end. So, the top 10 is, with 6 minutes to go, as here's a replay of Max Verstappen. And a slight bit of traffic he had there. I'm probably complaining. Yeah, saying that's dangerous from the McLaren. What the fuck? It wasn't dangerous. The McLaren was just keeping out of the way. As here's a replay of Carlos Sainz. I have no idea what that replay was. But 5.5 minutes to go in Q2, and we've got Norris, Piastri, 1st and 2nd, and then Verstappen, Hamilton, Leclerc, Hadjar, Antonelli, Tsunoda, Russell, Albon, your top 10. And then, in the drop zone, Fernando Alonso, what a surprise that is. And then Lawson, Sainz, Bortoletto, and Gasly. Yeah, where is the pace from Alonso? That's what I want to know. Fernando, I expect to go at least a couple tenths quicker than he did, which would have put him in 6th. But, yeah. In terms of what we've seen so far, though, in qualifying, McLaren appear to be clearly the quickest team. Max, though, looks a lot closer to the McLarens than I expected. And Ferrari look a lot better than they did in practice. Isaac Hadjar looking fantastic. Mercedes, I really hope, and I do think, did those first runs on used tyres. So expect Mercedes to get right in there. Antonelli, by the way, has looked good so far. And yeah, with Fernando Alonso, we'll see what he can do. But if he's going to get through Alonso, he's going to need to go at least 0.2 of a second quicker than he has done so far. If he does that, he will get through to Q3. As now we have a queue at the end of the pit lane. As they all slowly filter onto track. Obviously, they're going to do slow out laps also to not kill the tyres. As we look at the Mercedes on the broadcast of George Russell, currently in 9th. As I said, though, I'm pretty sure Mercedes did those first runs on used tyres. So on new tyres, Russell should be able to get right in there with Verstappen and Hamilton and get himself comfortably in the top 5. If he do any better than that, that'd be absolutely fantastic. But we'll see with Max Verstappen, who's on an outlap, and also Russell. If they can dip into the 1-minute 8s in this final run of Q2, then might have to include them in the conversation for pole position. Anyway, here is George Russell starting his final running Q2. Ran a bit wide, though, it appears, at turn 1. So not the greatest start. As Russell up to the first sector time beam. 1/4 of a second off Lando Norris. And Antonelli for the first sector, about 1/10.5 slower than his teammate. As Russell, bit of a better run through turn 10 than he's had previously. Russell almost matching McLaren through the middle sector. So this lap is probably going to put Russell in 4th place. As he comes through the banking, as Yuki Tsunoda's on an improved lap. Here comes Russell. And yet, 4th. 0.2 of a second slower than Verstappen. And almost half a second slower than McLaren. Antonelli goes 7th. It's going to be close with Antonelli. He might not make it through with that lap time. Again, it's going to be very, very close. As Russell actually did not go 4th. He went 6th. So, yeah, I'm surprised about that. I thought Russell would have gone a lot quicker than that. As we're looking at Pierre Gasly here. Surely he can do better than 15th. Can he somehow drag his way into the top 10? He can for the moment. He goes up to 10th, but I'd be surprised if he stays there. Here comes Carlos Sainz, who goes 7th. And that might just be good enough to get him into Q3. As here is Isaac Hadjar, currently in 9th. Been brilliant in qualifying today. Can he keep it up and get himself into Q3 yet again? He goes 7th, and yes, I think he has got himself into Q3. So checkered flag is now fallen. Bortoletto stays... Alex Albon stays in 12th. So Carlos Sainz will out-qualify Albon. Bortoletto now through the banking. Can he somehow drag this Sauber into the top 10? To the line he comes. No, he goes 11th. He did the same lap time as Yuki Tsunoda in 10th. What a shame. Good lap, but just slightly not enough. And Antonelli, by the way, I think is going to be in trouble. He's in 9th, but both Lawson and Alonso look like they're going quick enough to get themselves into Q3. We could have both Antonelli and Tsunoda out here. Here comes Lawson. Goes 7th. What a lap by Liam Lawson into Q3. Fernando Alonso now goes 7th. And yes, Kimi Antonelli yet again is out in Q2. Disappointment from the Italian. I said I didn't think that lap was good enough. And in the end, by a couple hundredths of a second, it was indeed not good enough. But there you go. That's Q2 done with. Let's go through your drivers that are through to the top 10 shootout. Lando Norris, Oscar Piastri, Max Verstappen, Lewis Hamilton, Charles Leclerc, George Russell, Fernando Alonso, Liam Lawson, continuing his great form as of late. Isaac Hadjar, great from him. Carlos Sainz, good to see him in better form, also making Q3. And knocked out in Q2, Kimi Antonelli, Yuki Tsunoda, Gabriel Bortoleto, Pierre Gasly, and Alexander Albon. And yeah, quite a bit of disappointment in that session for Antonelli, Tsunoda, and definitely Albon. He'll be very disappointed to be 15th, never mind, out-qualified by his teammate. But Racing Bulls, what a surprise they've been. They did not look like they were anywhere near getting both cars into Q3, and that's exactly what they've done. And again, Liam Lawson keeping up his great form. Remember, Lawson finished 8th in Hungary and also at Spa the week before that as well. And Lawson has actually scored points in 3 of the last 4 races and finished in the top 8 in 3 of those last 4 races. So Liam Lawson, one of the most informed drivers in the midfield, and he's kept it up. Good for him, because it's been important for his career to do so. As well, good to see Alonso improved. His pace, he was only slightly slower than Russell and the 2 Ferraris, but still wasn't quite what I was hoping for. But Alonso absolutely can finish, say, on the 3rd row. He's going to need to pull out a great lap, though, and hope that others don't quite get it together. Because, I'll be honest, it looks like Aston Martin probably are slower than McLaren, Red Bull, Ferrari, and Mercedes, which is what you would typically expect. So, there you go. And let's now get ourselves prepared for Q3, the shootout at the seaside. And from what I've seen so far, it looks like it is, in terms of the fight for pole position, it looks like it is between the 2 McLaren drivers. Max Verstappen is, he is driving superbly, but it still looks like that Red Bull is lacking that extra 1/3 of a second to really fight for pole position. So, yeah, I would say Norris versus Piastri for pole. But if the McLaren drivers, as they have done previously, if they don't do really that good of a job in this final part of qualifying, then the door is open for Max Verstappen to take advantage and maybe get what would be an unbelievable pole position. and would be his 4th pole position at this circuit. Remember, next year will be the final year of this Grand Prix. Sad it's going to be going off the calendar, even though it doesn't always produce the best races in terms of, a Grand Prix atmosphere and all of that. It really is a great Grand Prix. And in terms of affordability, it is one of the best out there on the calendar. So, yeah, that is a sad state of affairs, but unfortunately, that's the way it is. But as we are just moments away from Q3 beginning, I think we're another, 90 seconds away. Make sure to get your votes in that poll. Who do you think takes pole position? Actually, you know what? I think I'm just going to finish the poll results because I've looked at what the current standings are, and it's pretty clear there is a winner. And there you go. After 1.3k of votes, thank you very much, by the way, for voting. Much appreciated. I asked you guys who will take pole position for the Dutch Grand Prix, and 41% of the vote has gone to Lando Norris. That's who you think the most likely driver is to get pole. Second, Max Verstappen on 27%, Oscar Piastri third on 22%, and then Fernando Alonso fourth on 7%. And I agree. I think Lando Norris will take pole. It won't be comfortable like it was last year for Lando, but I think he'll take pole. Roy Sober Doer says, "Oh, so this is the last race on this track?" No, next year will be the last race at this circuit. This is the penultimate Dutch Grand Prix. Next year, as I said, will be the last Dutch Grand Prix. And hopefully, whether it's this weekend or next year's Grand Prix will go off with a bang. As Q3 has begun, and I think Oscar Piastri is the first driver on track. Piastri, remember, is ahead in the qualifying head-to-head. Only just, I think 8-6 it is. But for Piastri, again, remember, Lando does tend to be still. In terms of pure pace, I would say Lando is probably still superior over a qualifying lap. The race, though, is where Piastri is at his best. So as long as Piastri gets on the front row, I think he'll be satisfied with that. But if he can get, obviously, on pole position, that would be absolutely brilliant. Especially when you consider, as there you go, 11 minutes to go in qualifying. Especially when you consider that if you look at all the Grand Prix we've had here at Zandvoort since 2021, the winners of all those Grand Prix were the pole position man. So if you get pole, you're going to win. And let's see if Oscar Piastri can deliver that. Here is the beginning of his first attempt at pole at Zandvoort. He's never had pole here. Let's see if we can get it. The pole position time, by the way, should be anywhere between a 1 minute 8.3 and a 1 minute 8.6. So if you can do a mid 1 minute 8 with your first run, you are right in the fight for pole position. So let's see what some of these drivers can do. Piastri, good start to the lap. And slightly quicker, only by a couple hundredths than Norris in the first sector. As Piastri through turn 10. Now DRS open, down to the middle sector point. And this is a good lap from Oscar. Clean, quick. But I'm not sure if it's quick enough, as Lando has done a purple middle sector. Here comes Piastri, though, who does a 1 minute 8.6. That's a good start, but is it good enough to put him on provisional pole? Here comes his teammate Lando Norris. Can he put it on pole for now? No, he goes second. And is only slightly, and I mean slightly, slower than Piastri. It is incredibly close. Hopefully they'll show the gap in a moment. As here comes George Russell. Goes third at 1 minute 9.2. That's nowhere near, really. As here comes Carlos Sainz, who does a 1 minute 9.9. That was probably done on used tyres to save a set for the end of Q3. Here comes Alonso, who goes ahead of Sainz. Again, though, that was probably done on a used set. Here are the Ferraris, though. What can they do compared at least to George Russell? They're not going to get anywhere near the McLarens. Isaac Hadjar goes fourth. As Leclerc to the line, he goes fourth, quite far off the pace of even Russell, never mind the McLarens. Here's Lewis Hamilton, who's had a decent weekend. And he goes fourth, only slightly ahead of teammate Leclerc. As we now look at the home favourite Max Verstappen, already though, quarter of a second off in the first sector. Yeah, Piastri is 0.012 of a second clear of Norris. How close do you want it? And then Russell third is 0.6 off the pace. Big gap there. Can Verstappen put himself in the middle of it? Looks like he's going to, as he's 2 full tenths of a second off. After the middle sector, this looks like it's going to be definitely good enough for third. As Verstappen off the banking to the line. And he goes third, nearly 0.4 off the pace. And yeah, Max, he's doing the best he can, but the pace is not there to fight for pole. But he can definitely finish up in third. So the first run to Q3 done, and it is, yeah, Piastri on provisional pole by 0.012 of a second. Norris then second. Verstappen third. Russell fourth. Hamilton fifth. Leclerc sixth. Hadjar seventh. Alonso eighth. Sainz ninth. And Lawson in 10th. I'm expecting certainly a lot more of Fernando Alonso. Oh. But yeah, qualifying 3 at least has not been good, I have to say, for Ferrari. 8.5 off the pace of McLaren, which around a track like this is embarrassing to be that far off. Absolutely embarrassing. Thing is, though, that is not, I don't think, the quickest time that Ferrari have done in qualifying so far. I'm pretty sure Lewis Hamilton did a 1 minute 9.2 or 1 minute 9.3 in Q2. So there is more pace in that Ferrari car. There is no doubt about it. Is there enough pace to get on the second row? We'll have to see. But, you know, a third row lockout is not good enough whatsoever for the Scuderia. And they need to be at least fourth so they can get on the podium. They were never going to win this Grand Prix this weekend. McLaren, as we know, are just, you know, far too strong. But a podium is right there, and Ferrari definitely should be in the fight for that. So they've got to do a lot better on this final run. as the crowd awaits in anticipation for the final showdown. As we're just looking here at, I think, Isaac Hadjar in the Racing Bulls pit. Hadjar currently 7th. What a day he's had. And what season in qualifying Hadjar has had. Made Q3, I think, in half the races so far this season. Which, I mean, even though, yeah, the Racing Bulls car is good, that's difficult to do in the midfield with it being so competitive. You know, to be that consistently on it, to be getting in, you know, the top 10 and getting good positions that often. As all the cars, pretty much at the same time, all come out. And the first car out appears to be Lando Norris. And with the record of pole position winning this Grand Prix 100% of the time since 2021, Lando Norris has to get pole position here. Doesn't mean he'll win the race tomorrow, because again, if he gets a poor start, then, you know, that changes things. But if he doesn't get pole here, then he's going to need to be absolutely on it tomorrow, which we know is a lot of the case. Doesn't happen with him. So this is a crucial final lap between these two McLaren drivers. Because around this circuit, if Oscar Piastri can come out on top this weekend around this track, which is more of a Lando Norris circuit, then that is a big win for Piastri in him trying to secure his first title. Here comes, though, Lando Norris. These are the big moments where he needs to deliver. Can he do so? Through turn 1 he goes. Now into the banked turn 3, and absolutely brilliant so far from Norris. What's the first sector time beam looking like? It's not good. It's not a personal best, but it's only slightly slower by half a tenth than what he did before. What's Piastri doing for the first sector? It's good. It's a purple first sector. He's only slightly up on what he did before, but it's still purple. Norris now opens the DRS down to turn 11. Now he does a purple middle sector. This is going to be super close. As Lando now comes into the final real corner. Handles it brilliantly as Piastri half a tenth up on what he's done previously. Lando Norris to the line. Can he get pole? No, he misses out. He didn't do a good enough final sector. And that means, surely, that the championship leader is going to get a vital pole position. He also doesn't improve, but it doesn't matter. The Aussie leading the championship is surely on pole. And if he can get off the line well tomorrow, then that is a crucial win for his championship. Carlos Sainz has got up to 5th. Not sure he'll maintain that, though, as the Ferraris are improving. Here comes Charles Leclerc, who goes 5th. Lewis Hamilton, though, appears to be on a better lap and probably will go ahead of Leclerc here as Hamilton round the banking to the line. No, he doesn't do a great final sector and he ends up 6th. It's the 3rd row at best for Ferrari, but we're not done yet. Hadjar, Alonso and Lawson could upset Ferrari yet. As Russell, 4 tenths off so far after the first 2 sectors as Lawson goes 7th. George Russell through the banking as Alonso only goes ninth. Very disappointing session from Aston Martin as Max Verstappen does a purple middle sector. Surely not. Surely this man cannot do what I think he might be about to do as Isaac Hadjar goes fourth. What a lap. He's outqualified Russell, Leclerc and Hamilton as Max Verstappen improves but stays in third. But Isaac Hadjar is qualified fourth for Racing Bulls. What an absolute stonker of a lap. And he will line up alongside Max Verstappen for tomorrow's Grand Prix. But that's it. That's qualifying done. And again, a crucial pole position for your championship leader. Oscar Piastri is on pole. Lando Norris second. Max Verstappen third. Isaac Hadjar fourth. The best qualifying of his career. And yeah, he has been brilliant over a single lap this year. And brilliant in general. Russell fifth. Leclerc sixth. Hamilton seventh. Awful day for Ferrari. 8th, Liam Lawson. Great day for Racing Bulls. 4th and 8th on the grid. 9th, Carlos Sainz. 10th, Alonso. Disappointing day for Aston Martin. The pace just wasn't there. Antonelli 11th. Tsunoda 12th. Bortoletto 13th. Gasly 14th. Albon 15th. Colapinto 16th. Hulkenberg 17th. Ocon in 18th. Behrman 19th. And Lance Stroll will line up at the very back of the grid. But there you go. That is your qualifying for the Dutch Grand Prix over and done with. Let's get into who you think is driver of the day. And let me just set up that poll quickly in the chat. Who do you think is driver of the day for qualifying at Zandvoort? And the options for driver of the day will be, of course, Oscar Piastri, the pole sitter. I'm going to put Max in there. I thought Max was good today, but again, the car just wasn't quick enough to get pole. Isaac Hadjar obviously has to be in there. And I'll put Liam Lawson in there as well, because I thought he had a very good day as well. But driver of the day, obviously, is Isaac Hadjar. What a lap. He was quick all session long, but I did not think he was going to outqualify both Ferraris and both Mercedes. That is mental. And I can't wait to see what he does tomorrow. It's going to be a tough race for him tomorrow to hang on to fourth, but thankfully, it is difficult to overtake. And, I mean, looking at the lap time that he did, I reckon Hadjar can comfortably finish in 7th tomorrow. Maybe 6th if one of the Ferrari drivers doesn't have a good day. So, yeah, 6th or 7th, that's a great result. And if Lawson finished 8th, that's a lot of important points for Racing Bulls, at least 10 points. And that puts them right back in the fight for not just 6th in the championship, but 5th. But yeah, that is brilliant from Hadjar. Astro says Piastri driver of the day. Yeah, Piastri deserves a lot of credit. And again, I've said it so many times this year, ad nauseum, but it is the truth that when, most of the time, when it comes down to it, when it comes to delivering in the big moments, Oscar Piastri gets the job done. And that's why I'm pretty sure that Oscar Piastri is going to win the championship, because when it matters, most of the time, he will do the job. So congrats to Oscar. And again, as long as he maintains the lead into turn 1, he's won the race. So that's all he has to do tomorrow And then that'll be, what, a 16-point lead at least going into Monza, where I think he is, well, maybe not the favourite to win, because it's going to be a very competitive Grand Prix at Monza next week. Cannot wait for next week's Italian Grand Prix. If there's any McLaren driver that's the likeliest to win, it's going to be Piastri next week at Monza. So if Piastri can grab a win here at a circuit where I think Lando is a bit stronger, that just helps Oscar's championship chances so much. But there you go. A great qualifying session had. Again, reminder, I will not be doing a race watch along tomorrow because, unfortunately, the race tomorrow is going to be dry. And we know a dry race at Zandvoort means hardly any overtaking. And in terms of the fight up front, it's going to be decided at turn 1. So, I'm not going to do a stream just to see who wins the battle for turn 1. So yeah, I won't be doing a race watch along tomorrow, so you'll have to check out my podcast on Monday, where I will be, where I will obviously review the events of the Dutch Grand Prix, whatever happens in it. Remember though, next week, I will be doing both a qualifying and race watch along, 100%. And in terms of the timings for those streams, I'll be live next Saturday at, let me just confirm. Yeah, I'll be live next Saturday at 1:30 p.m. UK time for qualifying. And then for the race next Sunday, I'll be live as usual 2 hours before lights out at 12 p.m. UK time for the race. Nib, I'm very sure, will be on for that stream as well. So make sure to join us for those 2 streams next weekend for what should be a very competitive and interesting and, I think, exciting Italian Grand Prix at Monza. Brabham saying if Oscar wins the championship, I'll be bawling my eyes out. As he should. Obviously, it's been a long time for Australia since the last world champion, especially for a nation that's produced some very good racing drivers since then. But looks like that wait might be over very soon. 45 years since the last Australian Formula One world champion. And like I said earlier, will it be the first only and ever, or will it be the first of many? We'll find out in these next few years. Crystal Racing saying our feeds will be flooded with Lando receiving a knighthood, selling us burgers, Rolex watches, invites to Wimbledon, attending the BAFTAs and Oscar. I'm sure the media would prefer if Lando won for that reason exactly, because he'll be plastered everywhere. But that's not what wins championships. Skill and performing under pressure is what wins championships. And that's why Oscar Piastri is in the lead. And again, I think likely to hold on to that lead for the rest of the season. But it still is close in the championship, and it's going to be probably close-ish for the rest of the year. And you never know what could happen. Of course, DNFs could come into play. I hope it doesn't, but it has in the past and it will do in the future. So we will see as we've got a pretty close vote for Driver of the Day, I must say. So make sure to get your votes in if you haven't already for Driver of the Day. The poll that I've got in the chat. Yeah, it's pretty close. Look, a bit closer than I expected. But yeah, hopefully, tomorrow's race is a bit more interesting than I think it will be. But, like, say, the race in Hungary was. But, yeah, these cars are just too big to really go side by side here at Zandvoort. The cars look absolutely massive around this narrow seaside track. Looney Classic says some of these drivers claim to be from a country, but they live in Monaco and run from taxes. If someone doesn't want to pay tax, why should we celebrate their personal success? True, but a debate for another day. Let me see if I can find a couple comments before we finish up. And cheers, by the way, for everyone who has come along to the stream today. Of course, this is the first stream I've done in a month since obviously the end of, also since the beginning of the summer break, basically. So, yeah. Cheers to so many of you coming along. And yeah, like I said, make sure to join us again next weekend, both Saturday and Sunday, for the Italian Grand Prix. Cannot wait. What time does the race start tomorrow? Race starts tomorrow at 2 p.m. UK time, which is the usual start time. Mohammed says Piastri is so good. Wani saying Norris at it again. And Rooks actually earlier posted some of the quotes from some of the drivers in the chat, and Lando said, quote, "It's been close all weekend, could always go one way or another. Yes, a little bit disappointed not to be on pole. It's tough. I had a good lap." Maybe it was a good lap, but it wasn't good enough. Let me see if there's any other comments. Good comments I've missed. Noah in the Bush says V-Carb doing better than Red Bull. It has been said earlier in the season, like an interesting what if. What if Max did a race for Racing Bulls? He probably would have had a chance at pole if he was in the Racing Bulls. That's depressing to think about if you're a Red Bull fan, but it's the sad reality that Red Bull car just has not been anywhere near good enough. And unfortunately, Red Bull, well, from at least Red Bull's perspective, they're not going to win any championships this season, which will be the first time that's happened since 2020. And what do you call it? Max is going to struggle probably to win another race this season. Not impossible. You can very easily win next weekend at Monza, but again, it's going to be difficult. But we've had a clear winner now for the poll where I asked you guys, who do you think Driver of the Day is for qualifying? 157 votes. Thank you guys for voting. 43% of the vote to Oscar Piastri, 31% for Verstappen, 20% for Hadjar, and 5% for Liam Lawson. But guys, that is it for this qualifying watch along. Thank you guys so much for coming along for the stream today. Much appreciated, especially after a few weeks, obviously, of the summer break. Good to see so many of you here. And as I said, I won't be doing a race watch along tomorrow, but I will be doing my podcast on Monday, where I will go through and review what will happen tomorrow. And then next week, again, remember, I will be live for both qualifying and the race. And of course, on the Monday, the day after the Grand Prix, I will be doing a podcast reviewing the Italian Grand Prix and the events of it. So plenty of content coming your way in the next week or so for this double header, and plenty of content coming your way in general for these final 10 races on the calendar. But yeah, thanks to you guys for coming along. Great to see you all again. And I hope you guys enjoy tomorrow's Grand Prix. And until my podcast reviewing the events of the Dutch Grand Prix, and until my next stream, this time next Saturday, for qualifying at Monza, one of the most exciting qualifying sessions of the year. Until then, guys, it has been me, Chazza HD. Goodbye.